Hello everyone, welcome back to the NPC Dungeon. As promised, I have an episode this week all about playing little pranks on your players. I mentioned it a little in my last episode, I believe, and I told a few stories before on this channel where I talked about little pranks that I pulled on some of my players. I'll leave links and cards as always. But as you might be able to imagine, or as you might have unfortunately experienced before, this can go very wrong very fast if you aren't careful. I've seen and even experienced instances where DMs intentionally mislead their players or lied to them in order to come back later on and be all right about the encounter they made. It isn't funny, it's rude. Remember, you have a lot of power as a DM, and as DMs, we want to do everything that we can to avoid abusing that power. And that'll be the focus of today's video. I have 3 main points that I want to discuss about it. But before I begin, I want to say that for those of you who are maybe new to this channel, or maybe just don't know, I also release stories on Saturdays, and I just recently changed a little bit about how I do that. I decided to start adding more animations and visuals to the one that is coming out tomorrow, so be sure to check that one out and let me know what you think. But with all that out of the way, let's get started and let's learn something. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about here is going to be something that you can do and probably should do long before the actual prank even takes place. In short, you need to be aware of whether or not your players want to be tricked. If your players want to play a game where pixies can play jokes on them or their backstories might have unexpected twists and come back to haunt them, sure, go for it. But if not, don't do it. You might even have a situation where one player may want it and another may not. And this is fine. It's normal. And before anyone says it, it isn't unfair. Because this is what each player wants. If a player wants you to play tricks on them, why would they get upset when you do? For this player, at least for me, the unexpected is part of the fun. Okay, cool, but how do you actually bring this up with them? Session zeros, of course. I already have a few episodes on session zeros, and I'll leave links and cards to those as always, but for those of you who don't know, a session zero is any session that occurs before the actual game itself begins to take place. The group gathers and meets, but not to play the game. Instead, the reason why we have session zeros is to discuss what everyone wants out of the game, so that everyone can have fun, and we discuss what everyone is not comfortable with, again, so that everyone can have fun. It's a great way of setting ground rules, and I can't recommend it enough. All in all, make sure this is a conversation that you have with your players. But with that done and discussed, we can finally start talking about how to actually do it. Let's say that you have a pixie pester one of your players, or you have them roll a dex save for a non-existent trap just to keep them on their toes. That's fine. Just make sure that you don't introduce any long-term consequences as a result of it. For example, if you have pixies coming into play, they shouldn't say full-on steal something from your players that they can't get back. Remember, all you're trying to do is keep the game interesting, not actually harm the PCs. Save that stuff for more important encounters. Secondly, and this is one of the big points, do not lie to your players. If you have someone making an insight check and their roll succeeds, you'd better tell them what they can read off the NPC that they're trying to insight check. Don't say, oh, they're telling the truth, when the NPC is actually lying and come back later on as if you won something. You didn't win anything. Like I said earlier, this is an abuse of your power as a DM, and it isn't funny. It's just rude, so don't do it. And lastly, make sure that you give them every opportunity to figure it out and get out of it. If they do, let them. This falls into the same vein as abusing your power as a DM. This might mean allowing them to make checks on an enemy that is actually an illusion, or hinting at strange noises if their camp is being robbed by goblins. And if they figure it out, awesome. Reward them by letting them stop the illusion or drive the goblins away. Imagine how you would feel if you succeeded in figuring out some outside of the box encounter like that. Pretty good, right? And it would suck to be punished for that, wouldn't it? Well, that's what you're doing every time you put up a wall in front of your players when they do something creative. If you do this, don't be surprised if they stop thinking creatively and your game begins to drag. And for my final point, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Before we can see what the right reasons are, let's take a look at what the wrong ones look like. If you have a grudge against one of the players for some reason, that would be a very obvious wrong reason. In fact, as a side note, you should not be having a grudge against any of your players. If there's a conflict, discuss it with them in private. Another might be to punish them for something they did in the past, or to try to discipline them. You are their DM, not their parent. If what a player is doing is really causing problems, talk to them about it and please be mature. So, what might be some acceptable reasons? Well, to keep your players on their toes, to keep things interesting, to have a little bit of fun, not just for you, but for your players as well. Everyone should be having fun. Don't be mean-spirited about it, don't introduce harsh consequences, and let them figure it out if they can. Follow these guidelines and you should be fine. But that's it for today. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching as always. Feel free to check out this week's other video coming out tomorrow. As usual, it's a story. And in this one, I talk about a character that I played a while back. I also made a bunch of new visuals for it and started introducing more animations, so feel free to let me know what you think of that. Also, come back next Friday, where I give a very general overview on how I like to run large-scale social encounters, and come back on Saturday, where I'll tell the story of how my players in my current campaign are up to train. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and feel free to check out the videos appearing on your screen right now. Until next time, of course, let's learn something.